Hello, one and all. It is the Sound Off time, our freeform segment. It's our 28th Sound Off that we've ever done in our 44th series of episodes. It is Monday, November 27th, 2017. I hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. And hello, my name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts, and as you can see, I'm at my ex's in Playa del Rey while she's out of town, and I am cat sitting. It's getting dark, but you can see one of the cats there behind me. Hope all you guys are well, and as I sort of suggested earlier, the Sound Off is our freeform segment. We sort of talk about various things. You know, usually Davie has something to say about the entertainment industry in general, the film and TV industry. I usually do a top five. Maybe we'll address some topics that came up in previous episodes, and so forth and so on. And that's sort of what the Sound Off is. It's sort of our catch-all. So let me introduce who's with the Sound Off with me. In this series of episodes, you saw him in our talk about Rust and Bone. Jim Carroll's back with us for the Sound Off, our Jeopardy champion. How you doing, Jim?
So far, so good.
So far today, or so far this episode?
So far, this life, I guess. You know.
Okay, all right. So yeah, the first 52 years of your life so far are good.
Wow.
So now.
Wow.
And so also with us, as almost always, except when we're doing musicals, is the amazing Drunk Davie.
How's it going?
It's your favorite time of favorite episode.
I do. I like this one.
He has his own little segment. Davies doesn't drink on camera, but I do. My ex got me a lot of Goose Island for thanking me for cat sitting, so I've got this to go through. His doctor told him not to drink, so I drink alone when Jim's on.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're a jerk. Let me go over the schedule for the 44th series of episodes that we're just closing out now. About 10 days ago, we did Murder in the Orient Express was our current feature, and we had Jim with us on November the 20th for our indie spotlight, Rust and Bone. 2 days later, we did our classic movie discussion, Lolita, an interesting discussion, and now, of course, the Sound Off, and today for the Sound Off, Dave's going to do a diatribe. Jim, of all people, is a second run movie that he's going to talk about. And I have been tasked with doing my top 5 Stanley Kubrick films in honor of our discussion of Lolita. So we'll close out the episode with that. Before we get to Davey's diatribe, it's time to talk about this day in history. And this day is November 27th. In 1895 on this day, the Nobel Prize was established by Alfred Nobel's will. He was a Swedish chemist. In 1896, a piece of music debuts in Frankfurt. It's called Also Sprach Zarathustra from Richard Strauss. And Jim, that's directly related to a Stanley Kubrick movie. Can you tell me what movie made that piece of music popular?
I believe that would have been 2001.
2001, Davey, did you know that one?
Nope.
Nope. 1896 was the debut of Also Sprach Zarathustra. And in 1966, it's our sports thing in history. And 1966, of course, being a banner year for us. 1966 was the highest, on this day in 1960, was the highest scoring NFL game ever. The Washington Redskins versus the New York Giants, 72-41 in a Washington victory, 16 touchdowns in that game. Davey Jones was at that game. Davey, what did you think?
It's a hell of a game, man.
I mean, that's a lot of points. Should have done the math on how many points before we started. 113 points, it looks like, total. Today, also, November 27th, is the 75th birthday of Jimi Hendrix. He would have been 75 today, November the 27th. So he was born in 1942, which, of course, is a special year for us. We have our 1942 in Review show coming up in February. Jim, George, and I will be doing that. Jimi Hendrix was born on this day in that year. Jim, any comments?
No, he's great. Of course, I was named after him.
Okay, Jimmy Carroll, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it's true now. We're making it so. Davey, any comments on this day in history?
Nope. That
means it's time for Davey's diatribe. Woo! Davey, you excited?
Pumped.
You may think he's being sarcastic, but that is what Davey looks like when he's pumped. So he is kind of excited. So I'm getting the cards out. So the way this works is I have 3 topics written in the back of these cards, and Davey's going to choose a number, and I'm going to flip the card around, and he's going to talk about that industry topic.
Give me number
what's that?
One.
Number 1. Okay. Number 1 is festival fatigue. So this is an interesting one in the sense that there's been a lot of talk in the last couple of years that a lot of these festivals that lead to Oscar nominations are all at the same time. Toronto, Telluride, Venice are all competing for titles because they all want to be the film that debuts what eventually wins the Best Picture Oscar. The AFI Fest also is a little bit after some of those film festivals. It's a very complicated time, and all the same industry people have to go to all these festivals, and they feel like it's a gluttony of stuff. And a lot of the Oscar baity films are coming out around this time, are all trying to get into these festivals, and it's all too much. And the other thing that people talk about that Davie's going to comment on, or I want to ask him about, is the fact that these festivals are in September, October, November, et cetera. New York Film Festival is another one I should throw in there. There's historic examples of them getting a lot of buzz out of these festivals and then almost wearing themselves out before Oscar time. A great example is La La Land dominated these festivals last year, and by the time it came to Oscar time, assuming the Russians didn't hack that election, Moonlight won out in the end, and people got sick of La La Land. And other examples, Social Network losing to The King's Speech, Gravity using to 12 Years a Slave, and Boyhood losing to Birdman, sort of wearing out its welcome in the public mind. Davie, that's the concept of the topic, festival fatigue. What do you think?
I think I think people who have put forth that theory they've got a point.
And that's been Davie's diatribe, everybody.
Hey, Jim, can you back me up? It's just not funny, right? I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, like the first 20 times maybe, but what do you think? Let's get your opinion on that.
I mean, it seems to be his thing, so.
Don't rob me of my thing. Davie, continue with your diatribe.
I know. I think that if you take into account the fact that a lot of these Oscar movies, you start hearing about them before they come out, and then they come out very limited. They show in either New York or LA, and maybe not even, maybe just one theater. And then, so the rest of the country doesn't even get to see them until the next year, in February. It's a rush to see them before the Oscars. Just sick of these things before you get to see them. So I mean, I don't know if it's so much a problem with the voters.
What's the solution? Spreading out these festivals? Because I mean, I feel like the festivals' time of year made the festivals instead of the other way around. I feel like the festivals are popular and are well attended and make a lot of money because they're in September, October, and are a launching pad for these films. Whereas if Toronto moved to May, that's Cannes time, but moved to June or something, it would be a problem. And I also want to point out that the LA Film Festival, which used to be in June, is moving to the fall.
Oh, and this could be a total misconception on my part, but it seems to me that at one time that the festivals were to showcase the films to studios to put bids in and see if they wanted to distribute the film. And now it seems like it's more about just creating.
No, these films that already have distributors primarily.
Now they are, right? But I mean, was that always the case, or?
I feel like the festivals are started, to be acquisition festivals. And one of the big complaints about Toronto is nobody buys films anymore. They're just really launching pads and big, advertisements for buzz.
That's that, yeah. And I don't know if that's good, and I don't know what you do about it. Maybe you put gag orders in just like they do for screenings for critics.
These festivals used to have premiere policies that they become very lax about, because then they get, what if they don't get the film that they want? So now they're all showing the same, 15 to 20 films that are getting enough Oscar buzz. So with that in mind, I mean, is instituting premiere policies the answer, so that the same festivals aren't showing the same films? Or I mean, because that also leads to favoritism. Like Telluride's only showing Sony's films, Warner Brothers is doing all Toronto. Like, is there a solution there? Or
that's neat. That's an idea. If they would collude and just say, look, we'll do a draft. and
it's funny.
Show it one
draft. I think is a great idea. I think it's a great idea to so they can't show the same films and they have a draft. If they all want to coexist around the same time, they need to have a draft. And there should be like a law where a film can't premiere at a festival or screen at a festival within a month of the other festivals or something like that.
Fixed it. I think we just fixed the problem. And
I want to let Sorry, go ahead, Davey. It's your diatribe.
Yeah, because I want to hear what he has to say too. But I think it's going to get more films are going to get shown, and it's better. Everyone wins. Everyone wins.
In addition to that, do you want to spread out these festivals so that there's more opportunity to attend, or are you okay with them all happening at the same time as long as they're not showing the same films?
I'll tell you what. If you did that, I bet you they would spread back out again.
Jim, what do you think?
I actually love that idea. And then the studio, the film festival that had the least amount of nominations, of award nominations,
they get the first pick the following year
for the next year.
My God, we're brilliant. I mean, and first of all, we have to sell the rights to televise the draft.
That's got to be on E, right? The draft,
right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's got to be a better channel than E. I mean, because E is sort of gossipy now. Can we get something else that's a little more highbrow?
It's cable.
I don't know, like HBO maybe.
It's all garbage. Yeah.
TCM, would TCM do it?
Yeah, I guess.
I like this idea. Have you been to many festivals, Davey?
No, that's the thing is I haven't been to any festivals, and I don't like. Here's the thing: it's like when you're in New York, probably in LA, I'm sure the same way. And I think even in Chicago, it's like a film festival all the time. Like there's more movies in the theater than you can see anyway. So why?
Yeah, no, but I see what you're saying. You have plenty of opportunity to see the movies. I do like going to the festivals because I get to see them in advance, and a lot of our indie spotlights and stuff has come from these festivals. My number one movie of 2008 was a discovery. Never even heard of it or heard of the director before. It's called Let the Right One In. I saw that at Tribeca in 2008 and was my number one movie that year. And now that director Thomas Alfredson is very accomplished and we all like him, except Davey didn't like The Snowman.
That wasn't necessarily his fault.
That's true. So I like discovering these movies for the first time. So I've been to New York, LA, and LA is a terribly run film festival. I've been to Tribeca and I've been to Sundance. And Davey, you and I have talked about, back when we had J Money, the three of us going to a festival and sort of vlogging from it and reporting from it, but it's been very hard to organize that.
Tribeca, I looked at it. I almost went to see something, but I didn't do it. And then Fantastic Fest, because there's an Alamo Draft House here, but I didn't do that either.
Yeah, Fantastic Fest is not like, I'm talking about like the big ones.
Yeah, I know. It's
and in New York, Tribeca in New York Film Festival is more your thing. Tribeca, I have some nice discoveries, but I would say the majority of the Tribeca films are not at that level. But I've seen a couple good ones like Transamerica and the Beat the Heart Skip from director Jacques Audiard, who also directed Rust and Bone, which was our indie spotlight earlier. Saw that at Tribeca, Let the Right One In. Fighter, there's an Asian film called Fighter I also saw in 2008 that was terrific. Tribeca has its like gems hidden in the rough. Something like Sundance or the New York Film Festival, they're almost all good. I have not been to Telluride Toronto. I get sort of like Sundance was too much for me. It was too much of a crowd. Like I was really overwhelmed by it. Jim, what's your festival experience?
I think just the few times I've gone with you. I think I've
I brought you to New York Film Festival. Absolutely, I forgot. Yeah. See, I just talked about how great the New York Film Festival films were, but that was the only time I fell asleep in a movie. We saw a French film. I think it was also called Mother. Actually, we talked about Aronofsky's Mother earlier this year, but I think the film was also called Mother, and I fell asleep. I've never fallen asleep before in a movie or after, before or since.
What was the Thai film that we saw down?
Oh, was it the action one? Was it? I saw an awesome action.
No. It was the many lives of Boon Yi.
Oh, that Uncle Boon Me.
Yes.
Which that was not a festival. That was the Indie Spirit Awards screening series. That actually won Cannes. That film, Uncle Boon Me.
It's an interesting film.
That's a Vietnamese film. What's that, Davey Joe?
When you guys went, what's the most you saw in a day? And do you think that affects it? Like, when you see, like, when you're in your fifth screening of it in a day? The only times that I've seen multiple films in a day, because normally in Tribeca, New York, and LA, I've lived there when I went, so I didn't go to multiple in a day. Sundance, I was on vacation or I was on a trip, so I saw 3 in a day, and that was when I was driving cross country. So it adds up. These movies are $20 a pop at these festivals. It's expensive.
Yeah. All right, so Davey, we ran out of time. Are you good with your diatribe?
Yeah. I think this was really good. We did a good job.
He's happy with us, and that was Davey's diatribe. This is kind of fun because every time we've done a second run, it's been all me. So someone else is doing a second run. So I'm kind of excited about that. It's our second run, which is when a movie comes up in conversation and someone says, well, I haven't seen that before. And then they go back and see it and they come back to talk to us about it. And our movie for right now is one of our 1966 movies that when we did our recastings in episode 42.4, I think it was, Jim came on and was one of our panelists when we did recastings of movies. And one of the films we recast was The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. And Jim's like, I didn't see it. I'll see it now and tell you what I think. And he did, didn't you?
I did. Well, it came up. It came up also because when we saw
What Did You Do in
Blake
the War
Edwards.
Daddy?
Yeah, What Did You Do in the War Daddy?
It was my second run that Jim also watched, and that sort of came up as a compare and contrast because J Money used to compare and contrast them as both war satires, and Jim and I determined that What Did You Do in the War Daddy was more of a farce than a satire. I certainly would put Russians Are Coming well in the camp of satire. Jim, what do you think?
I loved this movie. I thought it was great. And I
thought you might.
We've talked in just these limited ones previously of things that we both like to see, and I think trusting your audience is a big one for both of us. I love that they didn't subtitle the Russians. I love that Alan Arkin was amazing.
He did get an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. And by the way, this shows you how different things were in the 60s. I don't know if you looked this up. Russians Are Coming did get a Best Picture nomination. And it doesn't necessarily feel like it would have the gravitas or get that appeal, but it did have a Best Picture and Best Actor nomination.
I kind of understand that.
It's great. It made my top 10 of the year for sure. It didn't make my top 5, but it made my top 10 of 1966.
I love the story. It's billed as a comedy. It's not a zany comedy. Any movie where you have Jonathan Winters and he's not oddball, he's playing it mostly straight. Everybody's maybe just a little bit heightened. I mean, Carl Reiner's a little bit heightened, but not too far from what real people are.
There's a plausibility level to it that works. It's funny and a little bit heightened, like you said, but there's a real enough part of it to be scary.
That's it. And that's exactly it. That's exactly where I was going to. Where they get to at the end is so real. And I think such a metaphor for what was going on in the larger world at the time that,
Jim kind of felt this was a foul tip. He felt like, what you didn't do in the War Daddy was a much stronger and more powerful message. But and he felt like Russians Are Coming wasn't edgy enough. How do you respond to that?
I think Russians Are Coming is a much more human film than What Did You Do in the War Daddy.
No wonder J Money didn't like it. Sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
And I feel like I have insulted him without even meaning to.
He likes it. Go ahead.
You give that character, Alexei and Allison, that little sidebar of finding humanity in each other.
I like the idea, but it wasn't my favorite sidebar. They weren't the greatest actors, but yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Just having that, they get the one-on-one, you get the groups of people, of the sailors moving through, trying to assimilate. I don't want to recap the movie. I thought it was great on all levels.
Now, Davie refused to watch it with you for this. Does Jim's review make you want to watch it now?
Yeah, I mean, sure. It's not that I don't wanna. It's just that there's how many? I mean, there's a lot of. There's only so many hours in the day, man. And there's a lot of movies.
You watched every other Best Picture nominee from 1966. Did you not?
Did I?
You watched Alfie, Man for All Seasons, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, The Sand Pebble, and this.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe. You never know. I may surprise you.
So out of those 5 films, Jim, how many have you seen?
I've seen The Sand Pebbles. Obviously, The Russians Are Coming. I've seen A Man for All Seasons. I've never seen Alfie. It's been so long since I've seen A Man for All Seasons, other than the fact that it exists. I couldn't tell you too much about it.
So based on what you have seen, do you feel like The Russians Are Coming should have won Best Picture?
No, I'd still give it to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Davie, J Money, and I all agreed on that as well, believe it or not. Although J Money did have What Did You Do in the War Daddy as his #1 movie of 1966 over Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
That's crazy. I will say this hit me about halfway through the sort of epiphany, realizing that Oscar Isaacs is the modern day Alan Arkin.
That was one of our recasting options, was it not?
That
when we did a recasting session. Yeah, Oscar Isaac is who we chose to play that role now.
But you could put him in Catch-22. Any Alan Arkin role.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, we talked about that too, how he looks the part. He looks just like Alan Arkin. We talked about that. Do you remember any of our other recastings?
I don't. Because I hadn't seen the film, I couldn't put a one-to-one.
We had Steve Carell in the Carl Reiner role. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I could totally see that.
And we had a little bit of argument over the sheriff. I went with Liam Neeson. J Money said David Harbour, but I think J Money really had Stranger Things in the back of his head.
I could see the David Harbour thing. I think it's because of Stranger Things. I really want to go older than either of them.
Older? Because Brian Keith isn't that old.
No, but David Harbour is still...
I like Liam Neeson's like tough guy persona in a small town. Like, I like that concept.
I think Liam Neeson is maybe the right age. I would want somebody older than David Harbour. Somebody in his 50s, closer to retirement.
I agree with that. And I got a little crazy with my Jonathan Winters role pick. Just for the zaniness of it. He's much older, but I thought it'd be funny to have an older deputy. I went with Bill Murray.
Yeah, I could see that. There, it would be completely different energy.
I know, but still kind of funny. Like, I can see him, especially the line about can't we all get along, or whatever that line is. I can see him nailing that.
Yes.
So aren't you glad I made you watch the movie?
Absolutely. It was a great film.
I'll tell you though, it sets a terrible precedent.
In what way? I'm scared to ask.
No, because I mean, it's gonna get your hopes up that people are gonna do this now.
Oh, you mean the second run?
Yeah. I don't know if I approve, Jim.
Jim's a hashtag team player.
Sorry.
Don't apologize, Jim, or Dim, whoever I'm talking to.
One or the other.
Jimmy, are you good with your second run? Anything else you want to say?
I'm good. No, I think I covered all the bases that I wanted to say.
It's a really good movie. We highly recommend it. I got to see it at TCM Fest in 2016 because they celebrated its 50th anniversary, and Eva Marie Saint came out and talked a little bit about the production, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I think I shared pictures of it in a previous episode. So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been our second run, which leads us right to our next and final segment of the evening. It's time for your favorite part of the Sound Off, my top 5. And this time it's my top 5 Stanley Kubrick movies. Stanley Kubrick only directed 13 narrative features in his life, not including his 3 documentaries. And he took lots of time in between each project, very meticulous in that way. The result was several masterpieces, several of which are frequently considered among some of the greatest films of all time. I had seen 10 of the 13 leading up to this. I watched one more. I watched The Killing from 1956 in order to prep for this top 5. Still haven't seen Killer's Kiss or Fear and Desire, his first 2 films. But I still feel like out of the 11 that I have seen, I'm in a pretty good spot to be able to do the top 5. Excited about that. And probably my top 5 is not from from a Kubrick top 5. Like some of what's considered to be his greatest works, it's probably not going to make my top 5. So I'm going to start with number 5, and hopefully this picture thing behind me will work properly. Number 5 is 2001: A Space Odyssey. I had to study this film intensely. I'd write multiple papers on it in college. I appreciate this film. It's monumentally deep, layer upon layer of meaning and existential rumination. It's super important technically, advanced the art of cinematography and special effects for 10 years ahead of its time. It's frequently compelling, but it's also frequently confusing. Fascinating film, but I stopped short of calling it enjoyable, which is why it's a little lower. There's an alienating quality to a lot of Kubrick's films, this included. So with that said, do you guys want to say anything about 2001, or do you want to wait till I finish the list to opine overall?
Finish the list.
No, I'll say
anybody.
I've loved this movie. I think the way that first of all, it feels like it's 2 different movies, and they're both awesome. And the tension at the end of that movie it's great. I mean, it's a great movie.
You didn't like Less and Bone because it didn't make sense to you, but I mean, like, the 4th act made sense to you right away?
Yeah. I never felt any kind of engagement in Rust and Bone the way I did 2001. So
look, I'm not saying Rust and Bone is better than 2001. I'm not saying that. 2001 is an amazing movie. I would call it a masterpiece. But I mean, like, I stopped short of calling it enjoyable. Like, it is a homework assignment almost. It's so groundbreaking in so many ways. I fully appreciate it. But I mean, like, I think you of all people, Davie, can appreciate the fine line between loving a movie and appreciating it.
oh yeah, I can, but I do actually love this one.
My old buddy Mike, it's his favorite movie of all time, and I don't. And Mike's not a bright guy. He's pretty dumb, and he thinks he loves this movie. So. Jim, you wanted to wait, or since Davie opined, do you want to say anything about 2001?
No, I this was sort of the movie that made me love movies in more than just an entertainment way. I'm a big science fiction fan, a science fiction reader. This was the movie that I came to sort of expecting something more than just an easy story. Obviously, it's not. I was engaged by the film.
I didn't say I wasn't engaged. I think what I said, I was fascinated, consistently fascinated, but I stopped short of loving it. It didn't have an emotional impact. It's a cerebral film.
I mean, there's definitely moments of that film that are emotionally engaging.
The most, I mean, and I had to write this part in a paper, and I don't want to dig too much into it. I don't want to make it about 2001, but the most, and this is completely purposeful, but the most human character in the film is the computer, Hal.
Yeah.
That's trying to make a point, but I mean, like, in terms of emotional engagement, there's an alienation. The alienation of Kubrick films overall is well documented. It's not like I'm making something up.
Yes, Kubrick can be alienating, but there are definite points, like that, the fact that you empathize with Hal when he's reading the lips through the shuttle, when it cuts back and forth.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I'm more playing devil's advocate. I really like 2001. It's on my top 5. Unless you guys are just really angry that it's not higher. Is that what it is?
No,
I'm not coming at you, man.
I feel so defensive all of a sudden. I think it's a terrific movie. I think it is a masterpiece, but it's not a movie that would crack my top 100 because I didn't feel it. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe there's something to the backstory of having to write all those papers about it. I also watched it too soon, I think, as a young lad. So in terms of like discovering it and rediscovering it, like, it took several viewings and research and writing to really appreciate this movie. And I feel like a movie should not necessarily require all that, and maybe that's just me being picky, or closed-minded. I don't know, but I mean, like, we talk about emotional engagement all the time, and so the difference between loving a movie and appreciating it all the time, and I think I'm calling it a masterpiece, and I'm not sure. I mean, there's a couple of these other films on the top 5 that I would call a masterpiece, but I just like them better. Fair, good. I'm going to move on now, which is kind of fun. I'm excited to move on. So let's see here. It's time for my number 4 is where I'm at. And let's see if this thing works again. And it didn't work. See, there it is. Yes, Virginia, I have a horror film on this list. The Shining. One of the most artful horror films ever made, along with maybe Ridley Scott's Alien. While The Shining also features a lot of depth, meaning regarding familial dynamics and the hypocrisy of the patriarchy, it never loses focus of the narrative and hence doesn't really alienate the viewer the way some films like Barry Lyndon or Eyes Wide Shut may have. And also, Shining's pretty damn scary. Shining also has come up in the previous shows as one of the 16 seeds to beat a 1 seed. As Davie, I remember being shocked that voters picked The Shining over The Searchers in the bracket of best films not nominated for Best Picture, and The Shining won there. But I agree that The Searchers is a better film, but The Shining, I think, is a great film and certainly one of my favorite horror films. Davie?
I love The Searchers a lot. So The Searchers is a movie I've been a big fan of. The Shining it's one that lately I've taken. I'm not going to do it. I was going to say I was a Shining too.
We're all glad you didn't do that. He shows some restraint, ladies and gentlemen. He's growing, just like the character in Rust and Bone, slowly growing, but growing nonetheless.
I'm not saying I agree, but I can understand how someone could pick it over The Searchers now, whereas at the time I couldn't.
Searchers is a masterpiece. I would say Searchers is even over 2001. Searchers is a top 100 movie for me. It's a terrific movie with a lot of depth as well. And The Shining is great, but I mean, it's not The Searchers, which is why The Searchers is a 1 seed and Shining was a 16 seed in that particular bracket. But again, I love The Shining. It's not really against The Shining, and some of these bracket choices can be tough sometimes.
I'll tell you, my first experience with The Shining, I was way too young to watch this movie on some pay cable channel, and I had nightmares.
Scarred you for life?
For weeks.
Just for weeks? That's all?
When you're like 9 years old and you see Jack Nicholson's frozen face every night for a few weeks, that seems like a couple lifetimes there.
I guess so. I don't know. Have you shown your kids yet?
Look, one of them, I don't think it would even phase her.
Your middle daughter enjoys the violence, is from what I remember.
The older one I showed Barry Lyndon to, and she didn't blink through the whole thing. So I think she would at least appreciate it.
Anything more on The Shining, David?
No, it's great. It's a great movie, and it's scary. You're right.
Davey and I agree on a horror film. Go figure. So it's time for my number 3, which we won't spend too much time on, I don't think, because it's Lolita, which is the film we just talked about in our classic movie discussion. So we talked about it in much more detail then. It's the movie that inspired this top 5. It's why we're having this top 5 to begin with. It's a master course on scene direction, and the way that he frames the scenes, the mise en scène, the detail, and the way he uses the score. The non-diegetic music is amazing. Terrific performances across the board. As I say in the episode, perhaps the best in Kubrick's oeuvre. It's thoroughly compelling throughout, exploring hypocrisy in society. If you want to hear what Davey says about it, you can tune into the other episode. But Jim wasn't on that episode, so if he wants to say something quickly about Lolita, he may.
No, I will make a confession. I've only read Lolita. I've never seen the film.
Okay, well, it's a good thing we didn't have you on our show for Lolita then, because you would have been pretty quiet.
Well, I would have watched it.
So yeah, well, Jim's got nothing to say. Hey, second run material. Now that we know he's game.
Don't do it, man.
It's not.
Don't let the devil on your shoulder, preach laziness.
It is not a punishment to tell me to go to watch a movie. So
yeah, see, that's the attitude, Davey. Anyway, all right. So more on Lolita. Tune into episode 44.3. I'm going to move on to our number 2 movie and like I said, a lot of his masterpieces that he's talked about, his masterpieces are not going to be on this list. I feel like this movie is not talked enough about as a masterpiece. And hopefully this thing behind me will work. And it is. You might not be able to tell from this poster, but it's a 1957 movie called Paths of Glory. It might be the movie that first got attention from the studios. I don't know why this movie doesn't get more pub as one of his greatest works. It almost feels like an afterthought after you think about Dr. Strangelove, Clockwork, and 2001. But it is a masterpiece. It shows incredible range. First of all, there's an amazing and impactful battle scene in the beginning with camera work way ahead of its time. And then towards the end, there's a complicated, nuanced courtroom drama. Both are handled with terrific cinematic detail. And it's similarly layered to some of his other films, and this time it's about the abuse of power, and it's filled with allegory and allusion, most notably the design of the courtroom scene to somewhat subtly resemble a chessboard. Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory is my number 2. Davey?
I have not seen it.
So Jim, have you seen Paths of Glory?
I have. I love it. It is one of my favorite films.
Wow, one of your favorite films of all time.
Yeah.
And before I reveal my number 1, I did want to talk to you about the movie that's not going to be my number 1 that I watched specifically for this. Just yesterday, I watched The Killing. It's not as good as this movie that we saw together. Have you seen The Killing? It's not.
I have not.
It's like Rafifi in a lot of ways. A heist movie that you and I watched together. And Rafifi is brilliant.
Yeah.
The Killing is not at that level, but it's close. It almost feels like, like a good double feature would be Rafifi and The Killing. Something to think about as far as heist films are concerned. So I thought I'd mention that while I had you here. Go ahead.
One thing I'd say about The Killing is not Stanley Kubrick's best movie. I would not say that, but it is my favorite of his.
Okay, so there you go. We're coming. Have you seen Rafifi though?
I have not seen Rafifi.
My top 100 films, most of them I've seen, a lot or over the years. Rafifi is the most recent film that I've seen that entered my top 100. Like it was that good. It instantaneously entered my top 100. That's how good Rafifi is. And Jim can back me up.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
And as far as heist films are concerned, The Killing does a lot of good stuff, but it's probably the best.
Wow.
Here's your bit of trivia. Did you know that the French authorities at the time didn't want the heist bit to be shown in theaters?
So meticulous of a robbery. Yeah, you told me that when we saw it, actually. You're repeating yourself once again. But yes, it was so meticulous of a heist that they were afraid someone was going to steal the idea because it was really unbeatable as the heist is concerned. You could argue that could be true of The Killing as well. The Killing is also awfully meticulous as far as that's concerned. Wouldn't you say, Davie?
Yeah, Logan Lucky, I watched that recently, and it kind of reminded me of The Killing.
I haven't seen Logan Lucky, but I plan to.
Yeah, you should. It's worth seeing.
Okay, my number one, and you guys have to say you aren't gonna be happy campers probably. The Kubrick film, the least. It's also with the same lead actor, and it also is my number one film on my top 5 films with scripts by Dalton Trumbo back in episode 22.4. So, and it is, let's see if this works. Spartacus is my favorite Kubrick film. Kubrick sort of disowned it. I think it gives it a bad rap. Kubrick, as an artiste, dismissed it because of how involved the studio was. But it might just be that the combination of Hollywood's narrative sensibilities and Kubrick's directorial skill was kind of the perfect mixture. I've got a good example here, a battle scene here that you might enjoy.
I still think the Trident's going to win.
Well, why doesn't it kill him?
Kill him.
Well, what's the matter now? Kill
Kill
him!
him!
Kill him, you imbecile!
Kill him!
Kill him!
Kill oh!
I think that's a great example. I mean, it has, some Hollywood sword and sandal sensibility, but there's Kubrick's detail and pace in the action scene that give it that extra level. It also seems to comment on the nature of slavery and also the class system. Also, it's any action that it's Woody Strode, an African-American man, is the one to rebel at first. So when it comes to, it's sort of that extra level of commentary. This film is super fun, entertaining, compelling. It's got great action, great drama, and great romance. It is everything you'd want in a movie, and I'm sorry Kubrick didn't like it, but I love this movie. It's a top 100 movie for me. It's simultaneously inspiring and nuanced, and it also has all the things that the Hollywood audiences were looking for at the time. It's a perfect package in that regard. His style after this would become a little more distancing from the audience, is a little colder, if you will, that I don't love as much. And that's why 3 of my top 5 are films he made before Dr. Strangelove, when he really started to go out on his own. And again, I admire Kubrick a lot, but this film is a film I really loved. I think I got a bad rap for it before on episode 22.4. What do you guys have to say now? Jim, I'll let you go first.
I think you pretty much said it all. I mean, Spartacus is a classic movie. It's sort of a tentpole of Hollywood films, and it is everything that you've said. It's a great movie. It's a fun movie. I completely understand your choice. I don't know if I would order them, the Kubrick movies, the same way. I get where you're coming from when you do that, when you say that.
I'm a little relieved, so that's good. I mean, I do feel like, yeah, I mean, to your point, I think it gets a bad rap because it was a part of a gluttony of a lot of similar films at the time, like these sword and sandal epics that, as the 60s move on, like Cleopatra, which we talked about, episode 31.3, it sort of killed the epic, so to speak. But this is the shining example. This and Lawrence of Arabia, you know what I mean? Like these are the films that we point to. Like these are the ones that stand out of that crowd.
Sure.
And actually, it features the only performance of a Kubrick film ever to win an Oscar. All right, Davie, Spartacus.
I like Spartacus. Did we give you a hard time about Spartacus?
It might have been J Money.
Yeah, all right. No, I mean, I'm not going to give you a hard time about it. It's a great movie. I don't know that I've seen it in 10 years. I think I had like a double VHS at one time in my youth.
Before they had the Firewatch things to avoid this, or he used to rent movies from the video store and 2 VCRs, tape them. And
you got to go on eBay and get one of those little Macrovision defeaters. Not that I'm saying that on the internet.
Well, I mean, before 19, like Macrovision and that stuff wasn't around like until 85, 86 or so. So like we got a bunch of old movies that way. So probably defined me as a youth. So the big omissions, guys, there's no Clockwork, no Dr. Strangelove. And we talked about Dr. Strangelove already in episode 3. I don't know if Davey remembers that far.
No.
Do you remember? You don't? Episode we did on Chappie. We also talked about Dr. Strangelove.
Oh, I'm trying to forget Chappie.
So anyway, but no Dr. Strangelove and no Clockwork, which are generally considered among his greatest works. Are you guys super offended?
When you get into these great directors, like do it with Scorsese or something. I mean, it's you're gonna leave stuff out. You have to. You're only gonna do 5, right?
Yeah, Jim, you're okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of what Davey was saying. I mean, you can acknowledge that they're all great, and then when you finally order them, I think a lot is personal preference of what movie talks to you versus the objective greatness of the film. Because when you're dealing with that sort of quality, what do you have left but your personal opinion?
All right, so real quick, guys, you've both seen a lot of Kubrick. So real quick, let's do your favorite one. You don't do top 5s, but do your favorite Kubrick. Jim, you first.
I would probably go with Paths of Glory.
Ooh, so my number 2. So we're somewhat simpatico there.
My controversial choice. I've really started. I showed my daughter Barry Lyndon. She really liked it. I hadn't seen it in a long time. I really liked it on the rewatch.
I went to a screening with Bennett Miller, the director of Foxcatcher and stuff. He introduced it, and he's a big fan of and he was trying to make his points of why he thought it was his favorite. I couldn't get there. I was thinking like, I'm going to rediscover this movie now with a little insight from Bennett Miller, and I was like, no, he's still wrong. But you're not alone. It is getting revisited a lot, Barry Lyndon. Davey, what about you?
I guess I let the cat out of the bag. The Killing is my favorite. I'd say the best. I'd have to go with either The Shining or Strangelove.
Oh, interesting. Not 2001. I thought you were going to go 2001, but yeah, I enjoyed The Killing. It's the one thing about The Killing I will say is he wasn't as good of an actor's director yet. Like I feel like the acting is not very good in The Killing.
It's what it is. It's any movie that takes place at the track gets an automatic extra star. Let it ride.
Says the non-gambler, Davey. So, all right, guys, closing thoughts. Non-gambler, you first.
I think we did it. I think we did a good job. I think that festival thing was just awesome.
One of the best diatribes, Davey says. Jim, you're going to be gone for a while. We're not going to see you again probably till the 1942 in review. What do you have to say?
Well, I'll definitely be watching movies between now and then. But
write them down.
But yeah, I think you guys really need to lock down that festival idea and make that happen.
All right. Well, we'll see what we can do. Well, I'm sure everyone in the industry watches this show, so we'll have like a meeting, a big committee after this. And,
Good.
So we have a big show coming up. Every year we've been doing a Star Wars film, and we're back again Thursday, December 21st with The Last Jedi. And that'll be our next current feature, and then the next time you see us, and that'll start our 45th series of episodes. Probably not our last for 2017. I think we're going to start one in January as well, which is technically a 2018 one, but it'll be a 2017 film. But anyway, The Last Jedi will be our next film, keeping up the tradition, this time without J Money. So that'll be next time you see us. And until then, this meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.